Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to present here today. Thanks to SANE and all of their hard work. Today I'll be presenting on the topic of the Anti-Nicene mysteries and their New Testament sources. To start out, we have to define some terms. The Greek word mysterion, most commonly plural mysteria, had a specific meaning in the ancient world during the early Christian era. It is, of course, the etymological source of our English word mystery, which denotes something that is secret or hidden. But mysterion had another meaning in the ancient world, being derived from the verb muo, to shut the mouth. Mysterion was used to refer to an esoteric ritual wherein silence was imposed upon the initiates. These esoteric rituals, or mysteria, were used to impart knowledge and hidden wisdom in the Greek mystery cults. And as we shall see, the mysteria were also well and alive in the early Christian church. The word mysteria was used by the Anti-Nicene church in connection with sacraments reserved for the initiated or more spiritual Christians. Since the mysteria were hidden rituals or teachings, it necessarily follows that they cannot be reconstructed with any certainty today. I will not therefore try to reconstruct the nature of the Christian mysteria. Rather, I will first survey some of the references to the mysteria in the writings of the Anti-Nicene Fathers, later show some possible New Testament sources for mysteria, and finally address the fate of the mysteria in Christianity. The mysteria are a reoccurring subject mentioned by the Anti-Nicene Fathers. In order to avoid misrepresenting their writings, at times we'll use lengthy quotations, but they're very interesting. So I will put them up on the screen for you so you can see them, so you can follow along so you don't get lost. While they definitely belong to the Anti-Nicene period, there is much controversy about the original sources, authors, and dates of the Clementia. They purport to be the writings of Peter's Roman disciple Clement, containing Peter's teachings and some of his disputes with Simon the magician. While it isn't impossible they could accurately report Peter's teachings, it is certain that they report a widely accepted early Christian perspective, and they have some interesting insights on the Anti-Nicene mysteria. Okay, Peter, speaking to Simon the magician, says, "We remember that our Lord and teacher, commanding us, said, 'Keep the mysteries for me and the sons of my house.' Wherefore also he explained to his disciples privately the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. But to you who do battle with us, and examine into nothing else but our statements, whether they be true or false, it would be impious to state the hidden truths." This statement is interesting on many levels. First of all, the mysteries, mysteria, according to Jesus, were to be kept secret. They were to be had only by him and the sons of his house. These mysteries are clearly given in the context of sacred space, namely the temple. These hidden truths are not to be given to the contentious anti-Christian or to the non-disciple. These esoteric truths are held sacred. Indeed, the Clements also quote Peter as saying, "The most sublime truths are best honored by means of silence." Peter explains that this doctrine of keeping certain teachings silent can be a stumbling block to missionary work. Quote, "But if Simon remains wrapped up and polluted in those sins which are manifestly such, it does not become me to speak to him at all of the more secret and sacred things of divine knowledge, but rather to protest and confront him that he cease from sin and cleanse his actions from vice. But if he insinuate himself and lead us on to speak what he ought not to hear, it will be our part to parry him cautiously. For not to answer him at all does not seem proper, for the sake of his hearers, lest haply they may think that we decline the contest through want of the ability to answer him, and so their faith may be injured through their misunderstanding of our purpose." According to Peter, to not openly talk about certain teachings can make the critics' arguments the de facto truth. On the other hand, speaking openly about such teachings would be a violation of the sacred command of Jesus to keep the mysteries for me and the sons of my house. This can be a delicate and frustrating situation, as many of us know. As Lactantius wrote, a mystery ought to be most faithfully concealed and covered. especially by us who bear the name of faith. Clement of Alexandria and his disciple Origen wrote more clearly about the Mysteria than any other early Christians. Clement, though considered orthodox, applied the term Gnostic to himself and other Christians who possessed certain higher knowledge. In his view, the so-called Gnostics that we hear so much about really usurped a title that belonged to the elite of mainstream Orthodox Christianity. A Gnostic is an Orthodox Christian trained by the mysteries. And I didn't put that quote in here, so I will read it. Wherefore also all men are his, some through gnosis, knowledge, others not yet so, and some as friends, some as faithful servants, some as servants merely. This is the teacher who trains the Gnostic by mysteries, and the believer by good hopes, and the heart of heart by corrective discipline through sensible operation. Clement here breaks down all humanity into three categories: the heart of heart, the believer, and the Gnostic. The mysteries are not given to the heart of heart, or even to the believers, but rather only to the Gnostic, who are trained in the mysteries. The Gnostics are apparently those who have repented of their hard hearts and proven themselves worthy as believers. It follows that these mysteries, according to Clement, are not exhibited incontently and to all and sundry, but only after certain purifications and previous instructions. There are therefore two levels of Christians, the believers and the Gnostics. Origen, who was a disciple of Clement of Alexandria, expounded further upon these different levels of initiation in the church in his defense against the anti-Christian Celsus. He wrote, "Now, in answer to such statements of Celsus, we say that it is not the same thing to invite those who are sick in soul to be cured and those who are in health to the knowledge and study of divine things. We, however, keeping both these things in view, at first invite all men to be healed and exhort those who are sinners to come to the consideration of the doctrines which teach men not to sin. And when those who have been turned towards virtue have made progress and have shown that they have been purified by the word and have led as far as they can a better life, then and not before do we invite them to participation in our mysteries, for we speak wisdom among them that are perfect. Whoever is pure, not only from all defilement, but from what are regarded as lesser transgressions, let him be boldly initiated into the mysteries of Jesus, which properly are made known only to the holy and the pure. He who acts as initiator according to the precepts of Jesus will say to those who have been purified in heart, he whose soul has for a long time been conscious of no evil, and especially since he yielded himself to the healing of the word, let such an one hear the doctrines which were spoken in private by Jesus to his genuine disciples. Celsus does not know the difference between inviting the wicked to be healed and initiating those already purified into the sacred mysteries. Not to participation in mysteries, then, and to fellowship in the wisdom hidden in a mystery, which God ordained before the world to the glory of his saints, do we invite the wicked man, and the thief, and the housebreaker, and the poisoner, and the committer of sacrilege, and the plunderer of the dead, and all those others whom Celsus may enumerate in his exaggerated style, but such as these we invite to be healed. God the Word was sent, indeed, as a physician to sinners, but as a teacher of divine mysteries to those who are already pure and who sin no more." Like Clement of Alexandria, for Origen there are three kinds of people: the wicked who need healing, those who have been healed, and ultimately the initiated, those who have received the mysteries. I should also note here that the above writing of Origen contains several references to 1 Corinthians chapter 2, which we will take a closer look at in a little bit. Ignatius of Antioch, while on his way to Rome for martyrdom, wrote to the Romans that he knew of heavenly things that he could not impart to them for fear of harming them by knowledge they were not ready for. He apparently took this knowledge with him to the grave. "I am able to write to you of heavenly things, but I fear lest I should do you an injury. For I am cautious lest ye should not be able to receive such knowledge and should be perplexed. For even I, not because I am in bonds, and am able to know heavenly things, and the places of angels, and the stations of the powers that are seen and that are not seen, and on this account a disciple, for I am far short of the perfection which is worthy of God." One thing is perfectly clear. Many of the Anti-Nicene Christians recognized that there were mysteries and teachings reserved for only the most spiritual Christians. Now we must turn our attention to identifying the source of these mysteries. As noted previously, the Clementia clearly identify the source of the mysteries as being Jesus himself. Quote, "Jesus explained to his disciples privately the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven," close quote. Origen also maintained that, quote, "God the Word was sent indeed as a physician to sinners, but as a teacher of divine mysteries to those who are already pure and who sin no more," close quote. Clement of Alexandria, as quoted by Eusebius, identified the resurrected Jesus himself as the original source of the gnosis imparting mysteria. The Lord, after his resurrection, imparted knowledge, gnosis, to James the Just and to John and Peter, and they imparted it to the rest of the apostles, and the rest of the apostles to the 70, of whom Barnabas was one. Could this be what Luke referred to in the Acts of the Apostles, where he said, "After his suffering, Christ showed himself to the apostles whom he had chosen, and gave them many indisputable proofs that he was alive. He was seen by them for 40 days, and spoke about the things pertaining to the kingdom of God." Here, and perhaps the most significant teaching of Jesus, there is no record of what he said. It seems incredible that Christ's post-resurrection teaching would be so quickly passed over by one of the authors of the Gospels, who is so meticulous in reporting every detail, unless some things are simply too sacred to commit to writing, the mysteria and the gnosis. It may be that these things are the things that the mortal Jesus said his disciples could not yet bear, but that they needed to understand, in John 16, verse 12. Shortly before he died, by the way. In his night encounter with Nicodemus, Jesus taught that a man must be born of water and of the Spirit in order to enter the kingdom of heaven. Early Christians almost universally understood this to refer to the most basic Christian sacrament of baptism. It is interesting, therefore, that Jesus, after teaching about baptism to Nicodemus, would upbraid him, saying, "If I have told you of earthly things and you do not believe me, how are you going to believe if I tell you about heavenly things?" If you refer to baptism and being born again as earthly things, what are these heavenly things? Is this what Ignatius had in mind when he told the baptized Romans they were not ready for the heavenly things which he knew? Clearly, the heavenly things were not given to all baptized Christians. Paul refers to the esoteric tradition in his first epistle to the Corinthians. After upbraiding the proud Corinthians for their contention and divisions, he frankly states that he came not declaring unto you the mysterion, the mystery of God, with eloquence or wisdom. Rather, he determined to know not anything among you but Jesus Christ and him crucified. This is chapter 2, 1 Corinthians. He continues, "However, we do speak wisdom among the teleos." Interesting word, teleos. "Not the wisdom of this world, or of the rulers of this world who are coming to nothing, but we speak the wisdom of God in a mysterion, even the secret wisdom that God has ordained before the world unto our glory." This is the very passage that Origen referred to earlier. What is this wisdom of God in mysterion that Paul didn't declare to the Corinthians, but that he does speak among the teleos? Who are the teleos? This word is usually translated as the mature or the perfect in our Bibles, but it had a very different meaning in the mystery religions, literally the initiated. Taking into account the meaning of mysterion and teleos, this passage could be rendered this way. "And I, brethren, when I came to you, came not declaring unto you the secret ritual, the mysterion of God." We've got some nice background music. Lovely. "And I, brethren, when I came unto you, came not declaring unto you the secret ritual of God with eloquence or the wisdom. For I determined to not know anything among you but Jesus Christ and him crucified. However, we do speak wisdom among those who are initiated, not the wisdom of this world or of the rulers of this world who are coming to nothing, but we speak the wisdom of God in a secret ritual, even the secret wisdom that God has ordained before the world unto our glory. So why didn't Paul teach the Corinthians these things? He says in chapter 3, it is because they were babes who could not yet endure adult food, but only milk before meat. The division here must be much like the division mentioned by Origen and Clement between those who are sick in soul, needing to be cured, and the healthy who are invited into the study of the mysteries. In my view, these New Testament sources ultimately lead to one conclusion. The Anti-Nicene mysteries have their source in the New Testament itself and the teachings of the apostles of Jesus. So that brings up the next question. Where did they go? What happened to them? Catholics, Protestants, most Christians today do not have a set of mysteries only reserved for a few. So I have given some very likely New Testament sources for this tradition. So what happened to them? Well, one possibility is that the Mysteria lost their identity as such. Since in the time of greatest persecution, all of the sacraments became Mysteria, being performed in secret to avoid the scrutiny of outsiders. Eventually, the separate esoteric rituals perhaps were absorbed into the common rituals of baptism, confirmation, and the Lord's Supper, and thus lost their separate identity. Eventually, after the cessation of persecution, the Mysteria reemerged as the 7 sacraments of the West and the 7 great mysteries of the East. Another possibility lies with the fight of the early church fathers against the different Gnostic sects. In her campaigning against these heretical groups, the church may have abandoned the esoteric traditions altogether in order to clearly distinguish orthodoxy from heterodoxy. Victory over Gnosticism thus meant the eradication of esotericism from Christian doctrine altogether. Whatever the cause, the division between the babes and the mature, the outsiders and the insiders, the initiated and the uninitiated, the gospel of the healer and the gospel of the teacher was lost. Thank you.